The alarm on the Kestrel Wayfarer cut through the mess hall like a blade, and every human around me jumped to their feet before I even understood what the sound meant. My 4 eyes darted from face to face. Trays clattered. Someone's drink spilled, and nobody stopped to clean it. A voice came over the speakers, calm but urgent, saying that the ship had lost contact with the supply convoy, 3 sectors out, and that all non-essential systems were being rationed until further notice. I am Veska, of the Andrali cluster, and I did not know what rationing meant for a ship this size, but I understood the word hungry very well, because I already was. My people process food differently than humans do, and the delay meant my body was already turning against itself, breaking down what little reserve I had left. I sat frozen at the end of a long metal table, trying not to be noticed, which is what my kind does when the world around us becomes too loud and too fast to follow. A boy sat down across from me. He had sun on his nose, the kind you get from standing under an open sky, and he was carrying a flat box that smelled of melted cheese and warm bread. His name, I would later learn, was Callum. He looked at me for a long moment, then he looked at the box, then back at me. "You look like you are having a rough one," he said. I did not answer. On my homeworld, a stranger speaking to you without invitation is considered forward, almost rude, but I had read enough about humans to know they did not follow the same rules. Still, I kept my breathing membranes tucked tight against my throat, a habit from childhood, the shape my body takes when I do not want to be seen. He tore the box open and split what was inside in half, sliding one part toward me on a paper napkin. "It is not a trade," he said, before I could ask. "I ordered too much. Somebody has to eat it or it goes to waste. Might as well be you." I looked at the offering. Then I looked at him. There is a saying among my people that a gift given freely is either foolish or dangerous, because it asks nothing in return, and things that ask nothing are the hardest to trust. But my stomach ached, and the smell was doing something to my resolve that manners could not overcome. I ate. It was strange and warm, and it did not taste like anything from Andral Prime, and for a moment, I forgot about the alarm still blinking red above the door. That was the day everything started, though I did not know it yet. 3 weeks later, the Kestrel Wayfarer received new orders. We were being rerouted to a border station near a region of space called the Drift, an area contested by 3 different fleets, none of them friendly to each other, and none of them particularly fond of Andrali either. My people had signed no formal alliance with the humans yet. I was aboard only as an observer, a junior attaché sent to watch and report, nothing more. I had no authority. I had no weapons training. I had, as my superiors reminded me before I left home, no reason to involve myself in human conflicts. But Callum worked in the ship's lower decks, running diagnostics on the shield systems, and somewhere between that first shared meal and the 3rd week, we had become something like friends. He would find me in the observation lounge during his breaks, and he would talk about his home, a small town with green fields and gray rain, and I would tell him about the twin suns of Andral Prime and how the sand there turned violet at dusk. It was easy. It was the only easy thing on that ship. Then the drift station sent a distress call, and everything stopped being easy. The message came in broken, cutting in and out, a woman's voice naming herself as Station Commander Priya, saying that an unknown vessel had approached without identification, that the station's outer hull had been breached in 2 places, and that they had less than an hour of air before the breach reached the central corridor. The Kestrel Wayfarer was the nearest ship. We were the only ship. The captain called a meeting in the main hall. I was not invited, but Callum brought me anyway, standing close enough that no one questioned my presence. The captain, a tall woman named Elena, with gray threading through her dark hair, laid out the situation plainly. The station had 42 people aboard, including 6 children being transported for medical treatment on a colony 3 systems over. The unknown vessel had not responded to hails. Our own ship was not built for combat. Our shields were down to 60% after the diagnostic failures from the week before, the very failures Callum had been trying to fix. "We do not have a choice," Elena said. "We go, or 42 people die, including 6 kids who never did anything to anyone." The room agreed, though I could see the fear in some of their faces, the kind of fear that comes from knowing you might not come back from where you are going. I felt something twist inside me too, something unfamiliar. On Andral Prime, we do not rush toward danger for strangers. We calculate risk. We weigh cost against benefit. There was no calculation here that made sense to me, and yet I found myself standing straighter, wanting to help in whatever way I could. The ship moved through the dark for 6 hours before the station came into view, a long cylinder of metal spinning slowly against the black, with 2 ugly wounds torn into its side, where something had struck it. Beyond the station, hanging silent and dark, was the unknown vessel, larger than anything I had seen on any registry, its hull an ashen gray that seemed to swallow the light around it. It still had not responded to hails. Callum found me in the corridor outside the bridge, his hands stained with grease from working the shield relays without rest. "You should go to the escape pods," he said, "just in case." I looked at him and thought of the first day, the torn box of food, the words he had said without hesitation. "It is not a trade." "I am not leaving," I told him. "Whatever help I can give, I will give it." He studied my face for a moment, and something in his expression softened, though the tension around his eyes did not fade. "All right," he said, "then let us figure out how to keep everyone breathing." The plan was simple in shape and difficult in execution. Callum and 2 other engineers, a woman named Priya's cousin Mira and a quiet man named Elias, would take a shuttle to the station and seal the breaches manually, while the ship's remaining shields tried to hold against whatever the unknown vessel decided to do. I was assigned to the bridge, translating any signals we might intercept, since Andrali sensors could sometimes read frequencies human equipment missed. The shuttle launched into the dark, a small silver dot against the enormous gray hull of the unidentified ship, and I watched it on the main screen with my hands pressed flat against the console, my breathing membranes so tight against my throat that speaking became difficult. Static crossed the comm channel. Then a new signal bled through, layered oddly, not quite matching any pattern in the human database. I recognized it though, distantly, the way you recognize a word from a language you learned as a child and mostly forgot. It was a dialect close to old Andrali trade code, used centuries ago by scattered colonies before the cluster unified its communication systems. "I am picking up something," I said. "It is not standard. It might be a warning." Elena turned toward me sharply. "Can you translate it?" I tried. The words came slow, fragments at first, then clearer as my mind untangled the old patterns. It was not a threat, it was a plea. The unknown vessel was not hostile at all. It was a scout ship from a splinter colony, cut off from any government for generations, running low on power and air, mistaking the station for an abandoned outpost they could shelter inside. Their weapons systems had misfired during approach, striking the station by accident, a terrible mistake born from old failing technology and desperate people. "They are not attacking us," I said. "They are dying too." Elena's jaw tightened. "Can you tell them to stand down? Tell them we are trying to help their people and ours both." I sent the message in the old code, slow and careful, praying my grasp of the dead dialect had not failed me. For a long moment, nothing happened. The gray ship hung motionless in the dark, and I could hear my own hearts, both of them, beating out of rhythm with worry. Then the ship's weapons powered down. A response came back in the same broken code, simple and raw. "Help, please." On the station, Callum's voice crackled over the comm, breathless from work. "Breach 1 is sealed. Moving to Breach 2. Air levels critical in Sector 4. We need to move faster." I relayed the news about the scout ship to him quickly, telling him they were not the enemy, that they needed help too, not to be feared. "Copy that," he said. "One crisis at a time, sealing the second breach now." The minutes stretched unbearably. I watched the station's air levels drop lower and lower on the display, a red number ticking down toward 0, and I thought of the 6 children being transported for treatment, children I had never met, and would likely never meet, and I found myself gripping the edge of the console so hard my hands ached. Then the number stopped falling. "Breach 2 sealed," Callum said, his voice thick with exhaustion and relief. "Air levels stabilizing. Tell the doctor we are bringing everyone through in groups, starting with the kids." A cheer went up on the bridge, quiet but real, the kind of relief that comes after holding your breath for far too long. Elena allowed herself the smallest smile, before turning back to the screen, back to the gray ship still hanging silent nearby. "Now we help them," she said, and it was not a question. It took another 4 hours to coordinate. The scout ship's crew, thin and pale from years of rationing and failing systems, were brought aboard the Kestrel Wayfarer in small groups, wrapped in blankets, given water and simple food, treated by the same doctor who had been preparing to receive the 6 children from the station. Their leader, an old man with tired eyes and a voice that shook when he spoke, thanked us over and over, saying his people had been alone for 3 generations, cut off and forgotten, never expecting anyone to answer a call for help, especially not a species they had never met. Before I could sit with him properly, a new problem found us. The Kestrel Wayfarer had never been built to hold this many extra passengers, and the sudden strain on power distribution caused a fault in one of the older relay junctions near the engine core. Lights flickered along the corridor outside the medical bay, then dimmed, then failed completely, plunging half the ship into a dull red emergency glow. Somewhere below, an alarm began a slow, steady pulse, different from the one that had started this whole day, quieter, but somehow more unsettling. Elias's voice came over the comm, tight with strain. "We have a power fault in Junction 7. If it spreads to Junction 8, we lose life support to the medical bay, and that is where every child from the station is resting right now." Callum was already moving before the words finished, grabbing a toolkit from the wall and pulling me along with him without a word of explanation, though I did not resist. We ran down 2 levels, past crew members bracing themselves against the tilting emergency lighting, until we reached a narrow service corridor lined with exposed wiring and humming machinery. "I need someone to read the old diagnostic panel while I work the wiring," Callum said, kneeling beside a scorched control box. "It is an older design, imported parts, the kind of system only the original engineers from decades back really understood. The numbers on it were strange, layered symbols mixed with human numerals, remnants of a manufacturing standard long since replaced." "I do not know your systems well enough for this," I admitted, my hands hovering uselessly over the panel. "You know patterns, though," he said, not looking up from the wires. "That is what you do. You read the old code from the scout ship faster than any translator program on this ship could. Just tell me what changes when I touch each wire. That is all I need." So I watched, and I read, calling out shifts in the flickering symbols as he worked, sparks occasionally jumping from the exposed connections, the air thick with the smell of burnt metal. Somewhere above us, I could hear muffled voices, a doctor calling instructions, a child crying softly, frightened by the darkness and the alarm. "The symbols are climbing," I said, watching a jagged line of light crawl higher across the panel. "Faster now. I think it means the fault is spreading toward you, not away." Callum swore under his breath, something I had heard humans say before in moments of frustration, and reached deeper into the tangle of wires, his jaw set tight with concentration. "Hold the light steady," he said, and I did, angling the small emergency lamp from my belt so he could see clearly. For a long moment, nothing changed. The red pulse of the alarm continued, steady and grim, and I found myself counting the seconds between each pulse without meaning to, an old habit from childhood, when waiting felt unbearable. Then, with a final twist of 2 wires bound together, the panel's climbing symbols froze, held steady, then began to fall back down toward a calmer pattern. The corridor lights flickered once, twice, then steadied into their normal white glow. Above us, the alarm cut off entirely, replaced by the ordinary hum of a working ship. "Junction 8 is clear," Elias reported over the comm. A beat later, Priya's cousin added that medical bay power had held the entire time, that not one system serving the children had failed even for a second. Callum sat back against the wall, breathing hard, his hands streaked black with soot. He looked over at me, and despite the exhaustion pulling at his features, he smiled. "Told you," he said. "Patterns. You are good at this." "I helped," I said, still a little stunned by how close the failure had come, and how strange it felt to have been useful in a way I never expected, kneeling in a smoke-filled corridor on a human ship, reading symbols meant for engineers I would never meet. We sat there together for a moment longer than necessary, letting the quiet settle around us, before finally standing and making our way back up toward the others. I sat with him for a while, translating between him and Elena, and I thought about how strange it was that an old dialect I barely remembered from childhood lessons had become the thread holding an entire rescue together. If I had not been aboard, if Callum had not shared his food with me weeks before, if I had never agreed to come to that meeting I was not invited to, would anyone have understood the old man's plea before the ship's weapons fired in fear or misunderstanding? I did not know the answer, and it frightened me a little, how close everything had come to going differently. Later that night, after the station's air had stabilized and the scout ship's crew had been given quarters and warm meals, I found Callum sitting alone in the observation lounge, still wearing his work clothes, grease still on his hands, staring out at the stars. "You did not sleep," I said, sitting across from him. "Neither did you," he answered, a tired smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. We sat in silence for a while, watching the light of distant suns, the kind of silence my people are comfortable with, the kind that does not need filling. "I want to say something," I told him eventually. "On my homeworld, we are taught to be careful with strangers, to expect that kindness comes with a price, that nothing is given without something wanted in return. I did not understand why you shared your food with me that first day. I still do not fully understand it, but I am glad you did." Callum looked at me for a long moment, and something in his expression was warm, open, without any of the calculation I had been trained to expect from strangers. "It was just pizza," he said, "but I get what you mean. Where I come from, we are taught that if you have enough to share, and someone near you does not have enough, you share it. That is it. That is the whole rule. No hidden price." I thought about the 6 children now safely resting in the medical bay, the old man from the scout ship sleeping soundly for the first time in years, the 42 people on the station who would wake up tomorrow still breathing because a group of humans decided a distress call from strangers was worth the risk of everything they had. "Your people have a strange kind of courage," I said. "You run toward danger for people you have never met." He shrugged, the same easy shrug from that first day in the mess hall. "Maybe. Or maybe we just figure everyone deserves a chance, even if we do not know them yet. You did not know me either, and you stayed. You could have gone to the escape pods." "I could have," I agreed, "but I did not want to." "Why not?" he asked. "Because you did not wait for a reason to help me," I said. "It did not seem right that I would wait for one to help you." He laughed softly at that, a warm sound that eased something tight in my chest, and for a while we simply sat together, watching the stars, saying nothing more, because nothing more needed to be said. 6 months later, I stood before the Andrali Assembly, a room of elders far older and wiser than I was, all of them waiting to hear my report on the humans and whether the cluster should pursue a formal alliance. I had prepared many arguments, statistics on resource sharing, projections on mutual defense, careful diplomatic language meant to persuade cautious minds. In the end, I did not use any of it. I told them about a boy who split his meal in half for a stranger, expecting nothing in return. I told them about a ship full of people who risked everything to answer a call for help from strangers who might have been an enemy, and turned out instead to be lost, frightened, and in need of the same kindness. I told them about an old dialect from our own history, one many of us had forgotten, that became the difference between war and rescue, and how it only mattered because I had been standing in that room, welcomed by people who did not calculate my worth before deciding I belonged there. An alliance built on calculation can be broken by calculation, I told the elders. But an alliance built on people who choose kindness before they know what it will cost them, that is something worth trusting. The assembly was silent for a long while after I finished speaking. Then, one by one, the elders began to nod, and the vote that followed was not close. I do not know everything the future holds for my people, and the humans who welcomed me aboard their ship. I do not know if every human is like Callum, or if every Andrali could learn to trust as easily as I learned to trust him. But I know this much is true. Sometimes the smallest kindness, a torn piece of bread shared without conditions, can grow into something large enough to change the course of 2 entire worlds. And sometimes, all it takes to start something extraordinary is one person deciding that a stranger's hunger matters more than the rules that say strangers should be kept at a careful, guarded distance. I think of that first day often, the alarm blaring, the smell of warm bread, the boy who did not wait for a reason. I think of how close I came to refusing his offer out of habit, out of caution, out of the careful distance my people are taught to keep. I am glad, every single time, that I did not.